First on the agenda is the pledge, led by Board Member Lisa Mordaunt. Thank you, Ms. Moore. All right. Now, moment of silence. We want to remember family of Tim Tackett, whose father passed away last week. And also remember family of Bob Mays. Bob was a longtime Rutherford County employee. Okay. Review April BEP and local revenue estimates.
Yeah, Mr. Beaudry is going to review the April estimates on BEP and also local revenues, which runs you're going to go over the local sales tax, which by the way runs 2 months behind. So we're actually looking at February, correct? All right.
Okay. It's going to have you, for your estimates, just look, this should be in front of you. It'll show the property tax, estimates how we're arriving at what a penny is, and along with behind that is some revenue estimates we're going to go through together here in a second. Before we jump into that, talking to Mr. Spurlock earlier today, and he thought this would be some good information I wanted to share with you. In front of you, you should have this right here. And let's just look at that for just 1 second, because this really plays into everything we've been working on money-wise, not just this year, but for several years now here at Rutherford County. It says, what I'm looking at right here is the top says ADM enrollment growth for Tennessee school systems. What this is the first 2 school systems you see, that's Rutherford County and Murfreesboro. And going across the page there, you see a fiscal year 2018 ADM. That's the actual ADMs that the state had us for final for that year. The next column is the 2013 ADM, which is what we grew from in 5 years. So as you can see, in that 5-year period between 2018 and 2013, Rutherford County had over 5,000, almost 5,100 student growth. The next year after that, we had over 1,000. And this year, our April estimate shows we grew by 1,040 more ADM. So this is consistently over 1,000 students a year. You notice in Murfreesboro below, they as well are growing. But I want you to go below that. And what I've got there listed for you on the next several pages is the 5-year growth or loss for every other public school system in the state outside of Rutherford, Murfreesboro, and 15 other county and city school systems that basically are the only school systems with appreciable growth in the state. If you notice on the very last page, it shows you there was a net loss of all these school systems of over 15,000 students in that 5-year period. So now, as a whole, as a state, we are growing in public school in attendance, but it is basically in that 17 school systems that you're seeing the majority of the growth for the entire state of Tennessee. And as you can see, what we're seeing in Rutherford County with over 1,000 children a year. I wanted to point this out to you because I know there's always been questions. Well, why does the General Assembly not address all this growth that we're experiencing in Rutherford County? And it's easy when you look at just Rutherford County and Murfreesboro alone to think, this is the norm. I mean, we've become so used to seeing 1,000 or more children a year. This is normal. Well, as you can see, for the vast majority of the state, there's no such thing as growth. They're losing children. So when we go to our state delegation and when they go up to the General Assembly, what we're experiencing in Rutherford County is not the norm for the majority of the state. Now, I say that because one thing to point out, there's a lot of discussion here, but I say this, and I give it to you tonight to say this. We know that Rutherford County and the handful of counties like us that are growing are the economic generators of the state of Tennessee right now. But when you look at the students, where the majority of the students are in just these handful of counties, including Rutherford County, what's inside our classrooms right now is the economic future of this state. You know, these students are not just going to be the next workers and the economic base for this county. They're going to be carrying the state of Tennessee. So when looking at that, when we invest money in CTE, College Prep Ready, it's not just to help this county, it's to help the state. And if there was any way to be able to communicate that to the General Assembly, that would be key. Because these counties, and Mr. Spurlock and I had this discussion, all these counties that are losing children, they wind up with stabilization money from BEP funding for the year after they lose children. They don't have the children, but they still get the BEP funding, like they still have them. And as y'all are well aware, in Rutherford County, our growth money is always a year behind, which means the local taxpayers pick up the whole tab for that growth until the BEP funding money comes in later. So once again, I know that you folks know that, but I know people are watching this right now, and just to know that the way the funding system is for the state money is really detrimental to the growth counties like Rutherford County, being that we're always 1 year behind. And that means 1 year behind where the state revenue comes in to help fund these positions, these new the new teacher positions, new administrative positions when we opened up school, Rockvale, the cost of principal, all that fell 100% on the local tax base. Thus, this school board put money back in the fund balance to make sure we had adequate funds to open that up. Because as we're going to go through this local revenue, and of course we're budgeting accordingly for sales tax on estimates, more than ever we're going to see where the failure of the BEP funds to budget for growth up front, that means just more of that burden is falling on local taxpayers to pick that up as we grow.
I think we talked about it, Mr. Baldry, that if we would look at the projected estimate over time, even with that, we could build in safeguards if we fell short of our growth. It would work a lot more advantageous to everyone.
Most definitely, and what Spurlock and I are talking about is right now, the way the system's set up with growth money, and once again, this is just a discussion for about 17 counties or 15 counties, about 2 city school systems in the state, when you talk about large amounts of growth each year. The way that growth money comes in for BEP funding, we'll get some in the middle of the year for the growth, based on how our ADM is going, and then we'll get the other part at the end of the fiscal year, around, end of June, beginning of July. Anybody that's ever been in business knows that when you expand an operation, and this is not just a business, but this is a school system, when you expand your operation, you need money up front. That means to open up schools, or if you're a business, to open up a new line, hire new employees. The thought is, and this would be a good discussion, for state delegation, is if you see that Rutherford County is picking up 1,000 students a year for 7 straight years, would it not be a good bet that we're probably at least going to get 500 more children this next year? Would it not make sense, just like a business would need the money up front, could you not give us half this growth instead of in February, give it to us on July? So we would have some funding up front. That would replace what this board's been otherwise doing with local money, is putting money back in the fund balance as we've grown just to open up a new school. And if there needs to be, once again, we would start the school year with half of it. Instead of getting it in February, we get it in July, half the BEP growth. Come the end of January, beginning of July, we get another portion. And then at the end of the year, we would even up with a small amount per the actual growth. But once again, that's just a thought, and it just, to me, and when I was talking with Mr. Spurlock, it just, anybody that's listening that's a business person knows that, you know, you need your revenue up front, your cash flow up front when you're expanding. That's any operation. I just wanted to share that with you before we went onto the revenue estimates. Y'all have any questions?
Mr. Guthrie, and Mrs. Forsythe, thank you for putting this together. I don't see Williamson County on here anywhere. Did I miss them?
I removed, on the top right here, it says, all Tennessee school districts except 17 counties and city growth school. They're one of the 17, the 17 county and city districts that are actually having some type of appreciable growth like we are. That's why I wanted to show you when you remove those 17 districts, this is what you see for the rest of the state. Like, for example, Cannon County, they're right next to us, and in that 5-year span, they lost almost 7% of their student population. Any other questions? Okay, if you'd like, we'll go to the revenue estimates and go through our April revenues on the BEP estimates along with the budget for local revenues for the general purpose school fund. I'm going to this paper right here. Okay, what you have in front of you with this is the assessments and what the value of a penny on the property tax is going to bring for this current fiscal year that's coming up. If you notice on the bottom right, it's got the revenue per added penny. That general fund penny, that is a penny, what a penny on the tax levy would generate revenue-wise, the $954,801. And right below that is what a school penny would bring on the tax levy, because once again, since it's a school, anything that would go to the school with property tax for the county would have to be shared based on a weighted ADA allocation with the city of Murfreesboro school system. Of course, it brings a little bit less. If you look to the left of that, you can see that distribution between the county and city with how that property tax is proration based on about just under 15% of the student body estimated, for the county, is estimated to be in the city school district, in the elementary schools. As is put out, we've got currently in the general purpose school fund, we have $1.74 of the tax levy going to the general purpose school fund. We have 7.5 cents going to the Educational Capital Projects Fund. And of course, the cafeteria fund does not have a tax levy on it. This has been, when we go to the next page, you'll see the property tax. The estimate for the property tax is slightly higher than this sheet. I've been working with Lisa Nolan, the county finance director, and with some pickup properties, she's increased the revenue slightly since this calculation was done. But that's reflected on the next page. Go to the next page. Is there any questions on that first page? I'm sorry. Okay, if you go to the second page, we'll walk down the revenues together. You see in front of you on the first column, or that column right there, the 2021 budget, we're budgeting for $85,136,287 for current property tax, dropping down $761,450 for the trustee collections prior year, clerk and master collections. Once that moves over to the clerk and master, delinquent taxes, $466,890. Interest and penalty off those late taxes, $160,300. Pickup taxes, $100,190. Payment in lieu of taxes, TVA, that's for payment in lieu of taxes for TVA property that's in the county, $6,117. And then payment in lieu of taxes for our local utilities, $970,000. for total county property taxes, $87,601,234. Local sales tax, want to talk about that for a second. Like Mr. Spurlock said, we have seen growth in the sales tax as the years progressed. This last, what was collected this month at the county trustee office, which is 2 months back, collections that were 2 months back. I say that was the property tax that the county trustee receives each month. It is actually from sales that comes out of the till 2 months prior to that. So it takes about 2 months for that sales tax to come from the till of a merchant, get reported up to the State Department of Revenue, and then it comes back to the county trustee and deposited in the general purpose school fund. So because of that 2 month lag, we're still seeing some decent growth on sales tax. Now, in the next 2 months, we'll start seeing, at least what's going to be, and I don't know, I wish I had a crystal ball to see if this is going to be just going to show a bad quarter for the next 3 months, or is it going to be something that prolongs? Well, obviously being conservatively budget, I'm going to budget accordingly, like this is going to be a year thing that's going to drop us.
Mr. Beaudry, have we heard any projections on possible percentage impact on the local sales tax?
I've spoke to a couple other county finance directors and schools in some of our other counties surrounding us, as well as, and looked at what the state's doing. At least currently right now, they're just budgeting flat. They're saying what we budgeted this year, we're going to budget next year. That's basically the theme I've been hearing. Now, there's a couple that have said I'm budgeting more or less, but that's pretty much what I've seen is, and once again, as we go through the next couple months, we can see what plays out. But for our preliminary budget, and I spoke with Lisa Nolan, and she agrees this would be a good place to start, is we had an initial budget of sale for local option sales tax for the current fiscal year we're in now of $67,460,000. This coming 2021 year, I budgeted below that at $65,885,000. So we dropped it slightly below what we budgeted this fiscal year originally to be conservative. Now, do I hope it's going to be better? I sure do. I really do. But I need to budget conservatively for you folks to have something to work with. I don't want to tell you that it's going to be better and it's not. Okay. Dropping down wheel tax. I had a very slight increase. They're budgeting $4,350,464. I believe that wheel tax will come in consistently like that. There has been, they have allowed citizens not to renew wheel taxes that were due this month, but that's not a waiver of that wheel tax. It is once we come back in this month in May, this next month, they're supposed to be renewing those then. So I believe that'll hold consistent. Business tax, dropped it slightly. During the recession, that held well, so I'm going to just be conservative, but pretty much hold the line there with $2,327,980. Mixed drink tax, I'm budgeting that below what we've got in so far. It's $222,370, and I believe that's a conservative number for that line item. Marriage license, budget the same, $12,000. Then you see our tuition that we charge for summer school, online. And once again, I'm talking about next fiscal year. That might be, we might wind up staying online. We'll talk more about that later. So very conservative in those tuition charges. Dropping down to, and just, like I said, very conservative charges for current services of $177,000. Drop down to interest earned, dropping that to $635,000 under the $850,000 that we're budgeting this year, because I could see, well, I wish I knew exactly what the stock market was going to do, and what the interest rate for fixed investments like we have invested with the county trustees is going to be, but I don't know, so I'll budget conservative at 635. Lease rental stays the same at 35,000, same with sale of materials and supplies. Then you see our E-rate, which I'm budgeting originally pretty much the same as last year. Continue to move down, just miscellaneous items, contributions and gifts, $25,000, $30,000 for the YMCA and TOA. TOA is, of course, the $250 that by our contract with TOA they will provide us. Bring us to other local revenues of $1,728,370. And we move down into state funds. On our April estimate, we received an April estimate of $236,054,000, and that, of course, takes into account the 1,040 additional growth. I believe that I feel good to think that that number is going to hold constant or actually improve slightly by our final July number for BEP. Growth funds for BEP, we budgeted $3 million last year. I'm budgeting $2 million this year for, once again, I think we're going to continue to have a large enrollment of children, but I don't know, once again, I don't know what's going to play out in the next few months, so I'm going to budget conservative at $2 million instead of $3 million for growth funds for BEP next year. That gives us a total of basic education program funding for next fiscal year at $238,054,000. Below that is just the IEA state funding for special ed, just small de minimis amount of $15,000. Early childhood education lottery grant, that's $1,351,793. Driver's ed off the fines for that is $278,000. Safe Schools grant, state grant, I use the, just like we've done in the past, I'm using just the $183,715. That's just for salaries, just as a placeholder, and just when we get our final Safe School grant award, I talked to David Krim today, he said it's coming, they're still working on that. We'll do just like we did last time, and I'll have a budget amendment before the board for the actual amount. You know, the difference between the actual amount and that $183,715, like we've done years prior. Coordinated school health, $180,000. Internet connectivity, $115,767. And career ladder, $601,770. And Jeff Sandvik, he showed me where in 1997, when he first came on, he showed me his estimate, the revenue estimate for that was just under 1.6 million. So you can see as the years have gone by, that career ladder has dropped as our older teachers have retired. Other vocational, which is that's some funding we get from the state, the $63,973 budgeted. That's for where the private sector professionals get their teacher license to help us teach CTE classes with the business experience they're bringing in. Dropping down is state revenue sharing TVA at $2,335,000. I want to pause on that for a second. If you're curious about what state revenue sharing TVA is, what that is, and this is interesting, at least to me, an accountant it is. You might not find it interesting, but
I got a few smiles out of that one.
Yeah. I enjoy this stuff. I really do. I mean, this
Never would have known it, Doug.
This is a wonderful time of year when you deal with minors. But anyway, the state shared revenue, the TVA, this is interesting, was basically because that revenue sharing comes from power sales that the TVA is generating. And so because those power sales are not taxable, what they do is they give a 5% in lieu of revenue sharing to the state, which also some of that portion of that revenue sharing comes down to the cities and the counties. With the cities, they do that revenue sharing based on population. And I mean, that makes sense. The bigger your community is, the more power you're using. So, it should go where it's being generated and sold. So the city of Murfreesboro, they get their revenue sharing for this based on population. Now, the counties, back in 1977, they passed a law that determined how the counties would receive that revenue sharing. And it's based on not population alone, but it's based on 43% population, 43% land area, that includes woods, and 14% counties with TVA land actually in them. Based on that revenue sharing in that law, Stewart County, you know where Stewart County is out, was it West Tennessee? They've got 14,000 people in that county, and they received 470,000 more in this revenue sharing than Rutherford County did last year.
Density.
Additionally, 470,000 more with a population of 14,000. Now, I don't think that 14,000 people bought that much electricity, more than Rutherford County. But I know some of you have asked me, since I've been here, you know, what are some things that you see that we could do? That right there is something that, and once again, that was put together back in the 70s when the rural delegates ran the General Assembly. That's something they might want to consider revisiting and do, just say, they might want to amend that to say the counties share just like the city's population. Okay. Other state grants, just placeholder at $15,000 for miscellaneous small grants. And that brings us to total for state of Tennessee, $243,194,018. Dropping down to the federal, in the 141 fund, $550,000 for IDA. And ROTC reimbursement for part of their salaries is $680,000 even. For total federal government, $1,230,000 in the general purpose school fund. That brings us down with a couple operating transfers, indirect federal project of $100,000 for indirect costs. And then the last one is the $50,000 for school nutrition items. What that is when our school maintenance department does work orders for the cafeterias, they get reimbursed for the time from the 143 fund, cafeteria fund, and we have $50,000 for that. That brings us to a total revenue and operating transfers in the general purpose school fund for next fiscal year, $408,658,436 is our original revenue estimate for next fiscal year. Does anybody have any questions on this? If not, we can go to the expenditure side of the 141 fund. And you have in front of you this, it is just the improvements of new positions and some other items in front of you for the 141 fund, and I'll let Dr. Sullivan review that with you.
All right, first I just want to thank everyone for their thoughts and prayers during this time for our family. My wife and I we have a quiet family, but the amount of support we've had has truly been unbelievable, so thank everyone for that. A couple things in talking about our budget process. So Mr. Bodery and I started, I guess, in October, November, really looking at this with one of the ways of trying to find ways to utilize the funds that we have and also make sure that what we're allocating each year are actually things that we are using. So it has truly been a year-long audit of what are the things that we are doing, what are things that we have budgeted that we maybe don't need to do anymore, and trying to make sure that we are using our taxpayer money with the best interest. So just part of our school-based budget process, they went out for school-based budget requests in December. So we went through our instruction team and we responded to each individual principal's request for staff development, staff, and then instructional materials. We started looking at staffing and positions for growth. We know that we're in a time of a pretty intense teacher shortage. And so in looking at that, we last year had budgeted 54 growth positions. And we were able to use some of those positions to go ahead and start granting positions for this coming year. So we actually haven't granted any positions so far this year into next year's budget. So all of them were actual granted positions from this past year in looking at saving money. Professional and staff development requests that schools did, we really try to utilize our federal program funding for much of our professional development. Instead of sending people to conferences and going to conferences, using things that we could do our professional development money in-house instead of that coming out of GP, coming out of some of our federal funding. Then we also looked at some requests that schools had, one of them being Mastery Connect is a pretty big program that a lot of our schools requested that they were paying for outside in their own school-based budgets, that we tried to build that into some of our other areas as well. We did the exact same thing with our central office departments. Each one of them went through and filled out requests for changes in classified hours, certified, anything they need staff development-wise. And we started going through and as a team in January, every specialist and every coordinator went through and started prioritizing what our needs were and started cutting things that we had in the budget in the past that we no longer needed. And so just a couple of examples of those, and a huge thank you to our instruction team for doing that. We cut various items. We had a Phelps kindergarten screener I mentioned a couple months ago that was outdated from the 80s that we were still paying for every single year. That was a savings of $7,500. We had ELA curriculum teams that were meeting. Instead, that $9,000 we moved into federal programming to pay for them. We had a blended learning, which we still are doing a lot with blended learning, but we are now to the point to where we've done blended learning just about all the way down through elementary school. And so we were able to move that was $153,000 that we were able to take out of our general purpose and be able to prioritize that. New teacher technology training. So even since I started teaching in this county, we have brought in our new to the county teachers. And I know it may not seem like a lot, but when we pulled in for one day, that actually came out to $41,250 in subs we were paying to pull our teachers out of the building. And that's training that our coaches can do after school instead of pulling them all out of the building. And we had another one. We had a kind of a program we were not utilizing as much as we could called Thrivus that we were able to save $250,000 from. And so there were quite a bit of cuts that we were able to make just in utilizing some of our funds. In looking at non-payroll items, we also have the CARES Act, which is going to help our county quite a bit in our school system budget quite a bit. We were actually able to look at this, and last year's instruction budget was $20,645,000, and this year's instruction non-payroll budget was $18,361,000. So we were actually 2.2 less than what we budgeted last year by utilizing some of our cuts and then also using some of our CARES Act and our federal programs money. So thank you to Doug and Mark and Mr. Sprague and our entire team for trying to find ways to do that. That was very impressive we were able to do that.
Let me jump in there real quick.
Yeah.
So I would have to say, not only did you and your instructional staff find ways that we could cut, but you also provided more impactful things that we did use our funding for. So I think that says a lot too.
Right. Absolutely. So the things that we were trying to do, if we wanted to add something, we said we had to pay for it for something we were already doing to get rid of. And we have some things we're excited to talk to our principals about as this budget process goes through and as our federal program money gets through that are truly going to help our teachers and our kids and know exactly where they are. So then if we will go to the certified personnel, so the sheet that looks like this that Mr. Bodery talked about, these are going to be our, if you'll go down to the certified personnel, if you look at the teachers in regular ed, and it looks like why have in the past we've been asking for 50 and 54 growth positions, and this year we only need 10. Well, if we add 1,000 kids, and we're trying to keep that average between 20 and 25 per classroom that is state mandated based on BEP, what we were able to do is really look at funding and move some things around with our current positions that we have, and we actually are planning on, just like we do every year, and supporting those 1,000 new students with about 50 teaching positions, but we were able to find several of them that we were able to go through. Instead of asking for 50, we can fund it with only asking for 10 growth positions at the regular education classroom. Same thing for regular ed music and art, 4 growth positions. ESL teachers, 10 growth positions. This next one, tech coaches reclassified to high school RTI coaches. That would really just be any RTI coach. We talked about this last October. Instead of having that hierarchy of one group of instructional coaches deals with instruction and one deals with technology, they are actually paid different. One works 210 days, one works 200. Calling them all instructional coaches and bringing them all under the same umbrella. What that did was that allowed us, instead of hiring a second instructional coach at all of our schools, it allowed us to utilize those instructional technology coach positions, all 36 of them, and then only have to hire that next one, 6 new coaching positions, so that by the end of the 21-22 school year, we should meet our 3-year goal of having 2 coaches in every building, which was part of our 3-year plan. 5 additional special education teachers. We actually, again, have a few more than that based on what openings we have currently, but 5 budgeted positions. 4 growth school counseling positions. An additional 5 days for our middle school counselors as our elementary school students move to our middle school level, giving them, those counselors, an extra 5 days. Currently, our high schools have 10. This kind of creates that streamline. Moving 2 of our specialists to supervisors to accommodate the extra duties of instructional coach supervisors. So we're going to have one that is working with K-5 instructional coaches and one working with 6-12 instructional coaches, so that way we can ensure that the message that we are delivering from our instruction department goes exactly and seamlessly as possible through to our schools. We will move 1 other specialist to the coordinator for additional supervisor duties. That's in our instructional technology department, as we are utilizing our online school as part of that role. Then just a couple new positions, so SPED assistive technology specialist, 4 assistant principals. I actually think we have that down to 3 assistant principal positions now, growth positions. Differentiate pay between the AP grade bands to attract more candidates for 9 through 12. Currently, our APs are on the same index, and Dr. Anthony and I, when we send out applicants, even for our, when we're doing, my mind just went blank on the AP. Yeah, aspiring administrator, that's what it is. We struggle to get high school applicants, of not just people wanting the positions, but to even get people that are interested in applying to learn about in our aspiring administrator. So that's something that is a definite need for us.
Let me jump in there real quick. We're probably one of the very few systems that do not differentiate according to grade bands as far as APs and administrators are concerned. Like he said, it's very challenging for our HR department to recruit those that are APs in high school when they're getting paid. And it's a very slight change. I think it's more to do with acknowledging that the task at hand is a little bit more challenging. But we feel like this will get us an opportunity to attract some more to the high school profession.
So that kind of summarizes our additional certified personnel. You'll notice that we didn't necessarily have any new positions for our instruction department. Our instruction department is still extremely small, but we are going to be utilizing some of our federal programming to do that so that it wouldn't be such a hit on our tax base. Just to kind of put that into perspective, we currently have, where instructional technology, of course, is extremely important with our 2-to-1 initiative, but we have more individuals on our instructional technology department than we do working with reading. And so when we think about that, that's a challenge for us, and we hope to utilize some of our federal programs to build those positions in to help with reading. On the back, we have our classified personnel. Same thing, just a couple new positions: ESL educational assistants 3, SPED EAs 12, occupational therapist 1, certified occupational therapist assistant 1. Athletic trainers, as part of our partnerships, are expiring, so the need to ensure that we have our athletic trainers at our sports facilities 2. So EAs to cover at-risk behavior, 4 additional positions. This next one is a little bit more of a placeholder, and I want to explain it a little bit. The way the BEP formula funds elementary attendance and classified and bookkeepers and secretaries is a little bit outdated, to say the least. So they fund you based on your number of students, not necessarily the roles that are required in a school. So we may have an elementary school with 1,000 students who has, based on BEP, a part-time bookkeeper, a full-time secretary, and then another part-time attendance secretary filled by an EA and filled by another secretary somewhere. Where this is a problem is when we think about our formula and our funding for BEP to make sure that all of our students are there. We have some errors if different people are coming and entering new students, deleting students, or transferring their enrollment, and we have quite a bit of cleanup that we need to do, which is truly impacting our funding. I mean, Mr. Bodery and I can attest, I think we've We found well over 600 kids. I think our attendance clerks and our central office staff have done amazing, but just errors for 600 kids, and when you're thinking at $8,000 apiece, that is a lot of money that's potentially being left out there just by individuals coming in and having to fill that. And the other part of that is truly, if they're serving as an attendance secretary, we should pay them as an attendance secretary. And so we have 9 growth positions, where it's probably not going to be 9 full growth positions, but that is to support the additional hours that are going to be needed to support that. And then 1 additional special education bus aide.
Have,
You want to go ahead and, while we're on that, go over transportation real quick?
yes, sir.
Let's look at that back page there, new bus route transit, count of 5, new bus route for special ed 2, rate changes for contract for drivers 5%, with a grand total of $16,577,549. Anything you want to follow up with that, Mr. Bowdre?
It's, that's, like I said, that we have budgeted this current fiscal year for the bus contractors. We budgeted for a 5% increase that they received. This would be, they're requesting another 5% for next fiscal year. And that, of course, that 5%, like Mr. Spurlock said, would cost $960,825. If you look on the first page, you'll see that we have budgeted for a 2% increase. That's what currently a 2% increase is in the BEP funds that we received in the April estimate for our BEP funded positions. The board has, in the past, they've tried to give the classified the same increase, the 2%, for janitors and EAs and other support staff. And you can see that cost for a 2% for the classified is $788,986 on that first page. You also see on that top the certified degree and experiences raises in the steps. That's what it'll cost to fund that. A state rate, a 2% raise for all teachers, all certified staff, 4.8 mil. And then below that's the classified steps of $532,595. Notice at the bottom of that, where it says the district health insurance contributions, budgeting $1,378,521 for that increase in the general purpose school fund for the increase of premiums. I've got 4.5% increase in there, but touching on that it really was around 9%. We discussed this as a board. We discussed this the last time we met, and we went through, the rationale behind the large increase. We had a substantial increase to our employees for insurance that's coming up this year. Really, we had about a 9% increase in the cost of this insurance. The board is picking up, the system's picking up half. That's what was decided by the budget committee and risk management and the insurance committee. But our employees are picking up that other half in additional premiums coming up. So we thought the 2%, since at least at the moment, the state has that 2% in the BEP formula right now for funding for next year, we went ahead and had that 2% in this budget to help our employees that not only getting the insurance increase, but also everything else with going up price-wise. Okay.
Mr. Spurlock, if I may, I've looked at all of this, and so I'm kind of not sure where I saw it, but did I see we weren't going to give our substitutes a raise? Is that in there? There was nothing budgeted for the substitutes?
No, ma'am. We're the contract that was extended by the board, the other meeting for next fiscal year. They Advantage XP requested that they would be allowed to have an extension, another year extension on the contract that the board approved at the same amount that it was this year. So that went before the board.
We gave them, did we give them a $10 per day? Did we give them a $10 per day? No?
Let me, wait one, and I can give you that number, ma'am. It is substitute teacher, after 20, they get a substitute teacher with a degree and active Tennessee license. Half a day is $55.02. Daily rate is $110.04. Substitute teacher with degree, college coursework without a degree or a high school diploma is $49.55 for a half-day rate, $99.09 for a full-day rate, and a substitute teacher for this contract after 20th consecutive day that has an active Tennessee teaching license and degree receives $76.91 for a half-day and $153.82 for the full day. And once again, that was approved as an extension for next year. So that's what Advantage XP requested, and that was before the board in March. So it'll continue for next.
Thank you for refreshing my memory on that. I just wanted to make sure, because I know if we're having problems recruiting teachers, you know, same probably is said for substitute teachers.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Bowdre, I may, on the same subject of substitute teachers, of course, we're going to have recognized, 2 full months, I guess, that we've been out of school now for this fiscal year. What will happen to those dollars we budgeted for substitute teachers during this time period that we're not now spending?
There is, well, good question, because we'll be bringing you some items that need to be looked at, I guess, in the next meeting.
Yep.
That, yes, ma'am, with this movement of children to John Coleman and some other items. Yes, ma'am. But yeah, that, we are seeing a good, you know, very variable, a variance that's very positive, not having that in there. And some other items too, we discussed about that, you know, with the school buildings closed, school's still going on, of course, online, but with the school buildings closed, you see some fixed costs and some variable costs that are dropped down. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
But we will be bringing you that.
And it's good that we do have those amendments to come so it can offset what we would have to, really wouldn't have.
Yes, sir. And of course, with us starting the year, being in this year with a budgeted deficit, yeah, anything that's a variable on the expenditure side is welcome. Anyone that doesn't have any questions, if you have a copy of the detailed expenditures in front of you, I just want to touch on a few items that I'm sure. Yes, sir.
Property taxes was the cover page.
Yes, sir.
First page. On the second page, local option sales taxes, 65,885. And one said that last year, same quarter, we would, or, well, that's the year, right? That's
Yes.
the year. Last year was 67 something?
460.
67, 460.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering, how did you come up with the figure, and I'm not saying it's wrong, I don't know, but how did you come up with the figure of 65,885 as an estimate for this total year?
I looked at what we budgeted now for the original budget for this current fiscal year, and after discussion with other counties similar to us, and then seeing what the state was doing flat, I then decreased it a small amount, about 2.3% less than what we're budgeting this year. For once again, the thought being, I didn't want to go any lower than that without some hard numbers coming up next couple months, but knowing we needed to have at least a good conservative starting point, I went with that number right there for a good estimate. And also, that amount, along with our growth and our penny, that will allow us to meet maintenance of effort for our BEP funding for local maintenance of effort, which is per the April MOE estimate from our BEP estimate. The maintenance effort estimate is $163,369,048, and this local revenue budget meets that to the dollar.
Seventh week, I guess, something like that, of closures, restaurants, retail stores, blah, 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 stuff, right?
Yes, sir.
And I'm really not disagreeing with you, Ms. Bowman, you have more facts and figures than I do. That, I hope that figure is right. It seems to me, I mean, we don't know when we're going to get open entirely. It's probably going to be sometime in May, maybe, if everything stays about the same with the virus or we continue to improve. But we're going to miss a quarter, well, not a quarter, maybe a fifth of the year of, and that figure just seems very low, very high to me. Well, I hope I'm wrong. But going by the traffic that I see, and it just seems like people are not shopping all that much, but you see my concern?
You're in the same dreams I've had for the last 7 weeks. Yes, sir, I have. I've wrestled with this because, you know, once again, I've looked into these other counties and the state, and I do not want to, on original estimate, I don't want to put it so low that we back our county commission into a property tax increase. I don't want to do that and then find out a few months later that you know, it came out better.
Right.
You know, that we recovered quickly. Now, on the flip side, like I said, I'm like you, as this progresses.
Yeah, I think that's what, I agree with Mr. Jordan. I think it's, and I agree, I understand what you're saying too. I agree with you. It's a lot easier since this is a beginning budget. Although we will, you know, ask for you or vote on it tonight, we know that process is, we'll have a joint meeting with our budget and health and ed. But I agree with you. It could be a little bit more impacted than 2.3%. But as we get some more numbers back in, and I would assume sometime at the end of maybe first 2 weeks of May or something like that, we could get something.
Yes, sir.
Middle of
Yeah,
May.
The trustee will get, you know, for the March numbers.
Right, we'll get those March numbers.
We're going to start, that, of course, that's where we're going to start seeing, like Mr. Jordan saying.
A drop.
Yes.
Well, I think both of you make a good point, and I hope I have as well. Well, we're going to have to be pretty nimble with that figure right there.
Yes, sir.
And it bothers me that we have lost Spring Fling, and we lost the Girls and Boys State Tournament, which were vital sales tax for us in the city of Murfreesboro. And I hope that figure is close to right. And I think we will.
I do too.
I think we'll rebound.
I do too, man.
Quickly,
But I agree with you, and I think I understand what Doug's talking about too. But we will see that. I'm certain that we'll see a drop there. Yeah. I mean, I think that goes without saying.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's good points, because, I mean, it's, we're tracking well over estimates up until this point.
Right.
With sales tax.
Right.
And there's the discussion right there is we should, with a drop, and like I said, I don't know what that drop's going to be over the next couple of months, see how we finish off this fiscal year. But going July forward with that sales tax estimate, that's the big question. What is our local economy going to do? Now, I can't speak for New York City or Atlanta, but I guess what we're going to see in Rutherford County, Tennessee in the next, couple months is industry-wise, economic-wise, is going to play out real fast for these estimates to hold true for next year.
We have lost a lot of sales tax. I was asking Doug, I don't know about some of these grocery stores, man, must be racking up. So Doug's going to check on, see how that works. We normally, what we bring in as far as local sales tax off of, you can get that information. Can you-
I've been wearing out Department of Revenue. I think they're gonna not like me if I keep bothering them. But yes, I will. That's
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you.
on the detailed budget, just going through these items. I just wanted to touch on a couple things. That very first on the 116-71-100 regular instruction, education program, the 116, the teacher line item, if you'll notice, there's an increase in 68 positions. I wanted to point that out because it's like Dr. Sullivan had just said, we're not requesting that many increases of new teachers. A lot of that amount right there, about half of it, is 36 positions that is coming from the 72210-138 line item, which is instructional computer personnel. That is those technology coaches that Dr. Sullivan was talking about that are going to be moved up to the classroom as RTI coaches, and they're being included in that 68-person increase. So when we go to 72210, you'll see a 36 position decrease. That's where those personnel, they went. They went up to 71100-116. Moving down on the non-payroll, to the non-payroll on a line item, on the first page, 71100, on 336, maintenance and repair service of equipment, you'll notice there was a budget increase of over 777%, going from 4,500 to 39,500. And what that is, and I'll let Dr. Sullivan talk about that, that's actually, where that's an increase, that's actually going to be a significant cost savings.
And so when we are looking at that, so we're actually looking at, is that the one talking about our copiers and all that? Oh, gotcha. So when we're talking about our repair of our band instruments, we asked our band directors at all of our schools this year to go through and give us an audit of truly where are their band instruments. We know with part of BEP, they do give them, and we get some funds to buy new instruments every year, but instead of using local funds and having to do as many, of course, they're still going to have to do school band booster fundraisers, this was going through and trying to find some funds when our band directors were asked by Ms. Halford, our fine arts specialist, for their audit. We went through and actually had each of our schools give us some estimates of items they could, and then she went through, along with some of our other band directors, and prioritized those needs so that we could go through and start repairing some of these band instruments instead of just purchasing brand new band instruments every time that we are needing them.
Below that, you'll see on 449, the textbooks for regular instruction, that actually dropped by 2.2 mil. You want to talk about that too, Dr. Sullivan?
And so this was one that we were hopeful would drop a little bit more. The ELA textbook adoption this year, with the state not giving us very many options, we weren't able to drop it as much. This coming year, the state postponed the math adoption for an additional year, and so we had to extend our math adoption for one more year before the state opens up the entire math adoption to match their standards. Since we are 1 year ahead technically for our textbooks, because we always budget 1 year ahead, this math adoption is not going to be until the 22-23 school year, but we need to go ahead and budget to cover the 21-22 school year. And so our textbook amount was much less than it had been for if we were doing a full 6-year adoption, because we're only having to add 1 year. So if there was a time that being 1 year ahead truly helped us, this was a year that being 1 year ahead truly helped us.
Okay. Moving down, you see on the last item with the decent variance is the 499, the other supplies and materials. That dropped significantly, and what that was Rocky Fork and Rockville. Those were startup funds in this current year for those two schools, which obviously we're not opening a school next year, so I decreased that line item. Alternative instruction, there's really not much difference there in variance. See the 100%, the state hybrid on, I'm on 71150, 217, and that's really the big jump, the 100%. That's just, we're going to be budgeting for the state, the teachers and the certified personnel that's under the hybrid retirement plans. We're going to be budgeting for that. Also, right after we get done with this, I've got a budget amendment to reclassify for that for this fiscal year to show as we get younger teachers, the newer teachers, in 2014, the state went from the legacy retirement plan to the hybrid, and the state would like to see us budget for those certified employees that's in the hybrid plan under that 217 line item for their retirement costs. Okay, next page, 71200 SPED. One of the items we see is in 322, down at the bottom, in evaluation and testing, you see a significant increase. Evaluation and testing, that's Middle Tennessee ENT, as well as just some cognitive testing. That has increased this year and last as we deal with more SPED students coming in with testing that's required. So I'm budgeting for that accordingly based on the amounts we're seeing coming in. Same with 429, instructional supplies and materials. That's just additional materials for not only the teachers, but also for related services like school psychs and social workers. Moving on, 71300, a couple pages over, career and technical education. One thing that we see is in 399, the other contracted services, it had a drop of 22%. That's from RCT programs. They had some training in-house that there was a partnership they had, a private partnership, that they had contracted some training out. Now RCT instructors can perform that training in-house, and that's given us some savings. Dropping down to 448, the T&I construction materials, that is increased for the construction programs at several of our high schools. That's the material.
We will be starting an MEP program at both Laverne and Smyrna High School. We'll be starting a STEM, health STEM program in Oakland, and a couple of more throughout the county that we haven't currently have.
I think we're adding 10 programs across the county for next year.
Going forward on attendance, set next page 72110, got in clerical personnel, the 162. That was just an increase of the board approved to add that one additional clerical person for the attendance office, and that's from, I can personally attest that's paid off well because they are doing a tremendous job in our attendance office. I remember what Mr. Spurlock made the comment back when that budget amendment came in front of the school board that the penny wise and pound foolish, that was the first additional person they had in over a decade in that office, and they have made good use of that person. And like Dr. Sullivan had said earlier, we're finding a lot of ADM that we were missing, especially in.
I'll jump right in there. I think we were down somewhere like 8,000 or 9,000 on at-risk we found.
Yes, sir.
Which would have accumulated a lot of funding from the state, and we found them. Well, they found them.
Yes, we have been, and that's another office here that I'm glad they tolerate me, because I'm continuously asking them, what about this, what about that? We need those numbers, because those numbers turn into a budget for revenue to support our school system. So I do brag on attendance because they've done a great job this year, and they got a new director over that department, and she's doing a phenomenal job. She jumped in there.
I'm personally glad they tolerate you as well, because they do a great job.
I know, I do. They tolerate me very well, just all my asking, and asking for them to find numbers. Dropping down to the contracted services, that increase, that was increase for the Skyward additional costs for that, for the new attendance program. The thought was, when we budgeted for this year, that for this current year, of course, it was our first year of Skyward, our understanding was that it would be less cost, that the state would pick up some of that cost, but that was our misunderstanding. Jeff and I were that was my misunderstanding. I was here. And so we budgeted that accordingly to what the cost will be. Health services, just see an increase on, in 72-120. One of that is that 189, the increase of 2, that's that occupational therapist and a COTA, a certified occupational therapy assistant that they were needing. You want to talk on that, the need of that right there? That's just more.
It is, as we start seeing, of course, some of our students have progressively more needs, occupational, physical therapy, and then just assistance to help with that therapy is something that is truly what BEP provides and what is truly needed by our district or oftentimes not in alignment. So that was when I asked our team, what is a position that, go through and start looking at things that we can prioritize. That was our SPED team. This is my number one priority, even more so above an additional SPED staff attorney. And so I know how much that is needed. So that tells me how much truly this is a need.
Move it on to go to the next, to the 72-130, other student support. A lot of the changes in those line items, the payroll is just reclassification that the state wanted for like safety grant and new staff. Like in 130, you see a drop in the social workers. That's just new staff coming on, replacing older staff with a higher wage. On 189, there's a difference of 10%. That's where the disproportionality that was getting budgeted in some of the wages there. Dropping down into the non-payroll, you see a variance, a sizable variance in 399, a drop in the other contracted services. And what that was is that was the MTSU athletic trainer that we're currently using with our athletic trainers to help them. That's going away, and of course we have in this proposed budget for the 2 athletic trainers to assist with that with our students. In-service staff development 524, I decreased that more to what they've actually been utilizing, and that's to send our guidance counselors for system-wide training. Next thing is 72210, regular instruction program. Of course, the big change right there is the decrease of $2.2 million. That is the instructional, the computer coaches, technology coaches that, like I talked about before, those 36 positions are going over to regular instruction, 71100, 116 as RTI coaches. That's the decrease in that line. The software down in the 471, that's just SPED disproportionality software where it was one-time purchase of that. And then the in-service is dropping in 524 is, once again, that was some additional SPED disproportionality, training, staff development, and we're, Kate's still working with, the disproportionality budget for next fiscal year, so that could come back with additional need for in-service based on what the state wants us to do next fiscal year with disproportionality. There very well could be a budget amendment if we don't get that in before it's time to pass this budget. Let's see, some other large variances. All the way over to 72220, SPED in the central office. That was in 189 and 72220. 189, other salaries and wages. That is that, the special, it's the tag, you want to talk about that, what that person will do? No, it's the, no, it's that,
Is this the contracted services for special ed?
no, sir, it's the assistive tech specialist. That's the SPED assistive tech specialist.
That just goes in line with what we were talking about earlier with our students having different needs, and some of our needs, physical therapy, occupational therapy, all those different support areas and related services that we're going to need to provide, especially looking potentially at kind of the situation that we're in right now with some of our related services.
Moving on over to 72230, Career and Technical Education Program at the central office. The one big large variance to point out is the non-payroll, the 524, the in-service staff development. It's got an increase. That is for statewide travel for the CTE competitions with DECA and other items like that.
Have we not always had that in there?
We have, we go back and do an amendment to move money every single year, so that was something that Tyra and our CTE program said, instead of moving money every year to cover our travel expenses, can we just put that into the budget of what we truly use for our students and our teachers that travel for those competitions?
What are we amending? What line item are we amending when we do that in the past?
She is, one of them was the 399, up above the 12,000. You see the 12,000 goes to zero.
Right.
And I believe she might be asking for additional request on top of that.
Yeah.
12, or on to 72250 technology, pretty clean line items. And one of the things that went up is look at 499. I'm sorry, went down 499 or excuse me, 471 software. You notice there was a drop of 201,182. What that is like Dr. Sullivan was talking about earlier, we were able to utilize CARE Act funds for technology items that would assist the students during this time, and that was one of them. We were able to pull some of our instructional technology out of that line item. Going to 72310, the Board of Education, to touch on this, under legal services, 331, we increased that by $30,000, and what that is to help with, we looked at putting one additional attorney, in-house attorney into this budget. And then with all what's going on, we decided let's look at doing some contract work first. And so we increased that line item for legal to give Sarah and Mr. Reed some additional help with the SPED attorney work, bring in some additional contract.
Volume is increased as the enrollment has increased.
Yes.
I think the enrollment is, as far as the percentage of our population, it's not really increased. However, the demands of our students have become a little bit more challenging.
The next few departments are pretty clean, and very little difference in non-payroll. It says 72510, my office, is I increased on 399 the other contracted services. What that is, excuse me, that additional 10,850, that will be, the last time we met, we talked about the timekeeping, the electronic timekeeping. The portion for the cafeteria employees, I placed that in the cafeteria budget. This portion here will be our first phase of bringing in the classified hourly employees on electronic timekeeping. We'll start with the central office, along with some maintenance, and our SPED bus EAs. They'll be going on the timekeeping first.
What would you anticipate ROI, something like that.
From what I've read on going from paper to electronic timekeeping, we'll easily get, because it's not just the savings of, and right now we fill out paper timesheets, and sometimes we're filling out paper timesheets 2 weeks in advance. So just to get it processed. So what happens is even the most honest employee would be like, okay, next week, I'm going to work every day next week. So they'll put that on their timesheet. I don't know what's going to happen next week in my life, and just like them, let's say the next Thursday they're sick or their child's sick. They have to go back, come back to us in the next pay period and say, I got to remember I need to do an amended paper timesheet to mark down I was sick that day. So even the most honest employee could forget that.
And your worker that's processing that paper,
A large volume.
that costs in terms of
Yes, sir.
getting time and where they could do it otherwise.
This also brings value to our employees they'll actually have, because this will actually, when they want to request a day off or a sick day, they fill out a piece of paper right now. This, they can actually go and they can use the system that we're looking at is the same as what the county has, the courthouse folks and the sheriff's department has. They actually will have an app on their phone that they'll be able to, now they'll be where, they'll have to be on the school server when they get in. They'll be geo-fenced so they can't clock in from the house, but they'll actually be able to get on their phone or onto a computer at work, and they can just do a request right there for a day off, so their supervisor can see that and request it or approve it. Additionally, it will give them a real-time accrual of their vacation and sick time. So instead of being like asking, having to wait till their pay stub comes out, they can actually see real-time what they have accrued. They know if they've got time to take off without, with pay. Yes, ma'am, that's it. 399, that 10,850. My hope is within 24 months of July 1 that we can get all the hourly classified staff on this. And then the other item I've got increased by $2,500 right there is 524. I've got I now have three employees with certifications that they're getting continuing education for to maintain their license. Moving on, 72610 operations of plants. We see some increases in 399, the other contracted services. And Mr. Lee, you want to talk about the needs? Of course, he's addressed quite a few of the needs. Talking about 399, 72610, operations of plant, 399. Those are the items of basic. What that is it's capital needs in the schools with the principals, as well as, go ahead.
We send out a list every year to the principals. The list continues to grow as our schools age. The problems get larger and cost more costly. Some of these have been pushed back for a couple of 3 years. We're not playing catch up. We're just bringing them forward and not leaving them by the wayside this year. It's by no means a fix-it-all. But it's some things that we need to address and take care of.
The other items, with the utilities, did just some very modest increases. Then the 499. That was just some additional, let's see, tech plans. 22, 16, 499. That was just some additional items like Mr. Lee has talked about just at the school systems with some needs in there that they could, do the maintenance personnel, instead of doing a contracted through 399, the maintenance personnel could provide the labor to do some work that's needed, that's been identified at the schools. So I think that's where that increase is. On 72,620, maintenance of plant, next page 701, you'll notice it was a drop of 200,000 to zero. What that is that's that school safety grant. And once again, we'll come back with a budget amendment once we have an actual grant award number for the non-payroll equipment. That'll go in that line item. Moving forward to 72,710, transportation. The large increase, of course, the 315, the contracts with vehicle owners, the 2.3 million, that is that 5% increase along with adding some additional routes and an increase in mileage for those driving those routes. Then there's an increase in 701. That's the two-way, that's some increase for some two-way radios from the central office for better dispatching and communication.
Back up and tell me, and you may have 399 other contracting
Services, 23.8% increase under PR taxes and benefits.
Yes, the 399 and 72,710, that's Edulog and some other communication equipment.
We're having to rebuild our system this year. Edulog is our bus routing system, which helps us tells us where the bus stops are and what time they're going to be there, and it also with GPS tracking helps us get there. And every year for the last 6 or 7 years, they add another layer as we add routes, and sooner or later you get to a point where you've got so many layers you can't read through it, and you have to rebuild the route, and that's what that is. We're rebuilding the route this year.
Going on to 73300, community services, that's of course the alternative schools and the clothing for the children that need it, the needy children, so they can hopefully curtail some truancy and attendance problems. That stayed the same. Preschool program, that is of course the voluntary pre-K along with the special education preschool. They're really no changes there, preschool if anything. Then our regular capital outlay, no change there. And then 82,130, the debt service, you see it decreased slightly. There was the capital lease that we had the final payment made this year, so that's dropped off. And we're now having 3 loans that we have that's being serviced in 82,130 and 82,230 for the debt service for the interest, and 82,230. And I used the amortization tables for 2 of those loans, and I've got one. I'm doing a closeout right now with the 3rd loan with Mr. Lee, and I'm using an estimated payment for one of those 3. I've coordinated with the county finance office to make sure they're in agreement with that number. And once I get the closeout for that final loan, then I'll have a solid amortization table for that one. And budgeting no transfers in 99,100, and that comes to the last page with a grand total of $428,053,690 for the expenditure side of our 2021 proposed budget. And if it's agreeable with the board, then if you can move to approve it as it is now, of course, I know it's going to be some changes. That way we can present that to Health and Ed tomorrow.
Got 427, 957, 837. $427,957,837.
Yes, sir.
And that was your revenues projected at 408
8.
and some change, 408,658,436, and that is a difference of $10,175,458. Is that correct?
It's an increase, the 10 million,
$10,175,458.
that's the increase. The
That's
four,
the increase.
yes, of the expenditure side, it's 10,271,311 is the increase of the expenditures from the current fiscal year.
Give it to me again.
10,271,311, and that is an increase of expenditures over the current fiscal year of 2.5%.
Gotcha. Mine was a little over
Okay,
Okay,
well, go ahead.
yeah, motion to approve the fiscal year 2020, 2021 Fund 141 General Purpose School Budget as presented.
So moved. Motion, have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Questions?
What's our timeline now? We're going to, if this passes, we're going to give Health and Ed this material tomorrow night?
Yes, sir. And then obviously we'd go through, our next meeting would be with Budget and Finance, and then we'd have that meeting here. What was it, May the 26th? And by that time, Doug, we will get some types of information back on our local sales.
Yes, sir. We'll have another month in, and also hopefully get some feedback from the county commission, the budget committee on, their thoughts.
We have to start somewhere. I know we're in a situation that's never occurred before, to my knowledge, in the history of this county. I'm hoping we're going to be nimble with this, because I'm reasonably certain that we've got some obstacles and a lot to explain, maybe. And on the other hand, there probably something here that could be changed or whatever. I'm sure there is, but generally speaking, we know what we need, and I think, despite maybe the opinion of others who are not in this room, I think we've been open and transparent and absolutely honest with what we've requested. I don't know what else to.
Well, one of the things, Mr. Jordan, is we are, and this is a different, I don't think we've ever faced something like this. With that said, I think there's a little bit, back in 2009, there was still some dark clouds hanging over as far as finances are concerned. And one of the things, this recovery here, when it does occur, we feel very confident it's going to be very roaring in terms of how it's going to come back, because it hasn't anything to do with what was occurring prior to this virus taking place and the shutdown. Looking at our budget and looking at our proposed budget, we do know that perhaps there are some things that we'll have to revisit. But when you're looking at a 2.5% increase, that's looking over the past 3 or 4 years, that's probably as small of increase that we've ever had. However, I think it goes without saying, this is a more challenging time than perhaps we've had in a while, at least since 2009.
We have also, and Mr. Beaudry made a big point, and I'm glad that he did, that we have gained right at, or just a touch over 1,000 students every year for the last 7 years. And that's exactly correct. We've had years where it was 1,500 and 1,700. And if memory serves, maybe Mr. Hodge could help me here, but 1,800, and nearly double what we're estimating here. You know, I had a call. I'll shut up and we can vote whenever y'all want to here. I had a call this week about the lunches thing, and what I believe we sort of said that had we been through the entire year, had we gone the entire year with the lunch debt, it would have been $300,000 or right at it, you know. And they said, well, that's not much money. You all got millions of dollars. You know, what's the problem? And I said, I'll tell you what the problem is. The problem is that's 7 teachers. That's the problem. That's 7 base salaries of teachers. And you look at it that way, and it becomes kind of important. Thank you for tolerating me.
I agree, we're making a lot of assumptions here, and I think, like Ms. Spurlock just pointed out, this is probably the least amount we've asked for since I've been on the board. One thing I would like to ask, though, we're also assuming that we're going back to school in August, and we're going to go back to life just like it was before this virus. Now, what's to say if we don't go back to school in August, or if we have to adapt to a new way of doing things, such as checking temperatures when they walk in the door. That's going to require additional personnel and things like that. So are we going to try to make any kind of adjustments for
You know, one of the things we're doing with this money already is we're developing a more rigorous online platform. With some of this CARE Act money, we're going to be purchasing what's called a Canvas platform, where up to 58,000 students can have an individual account, and along with every one of our teachers. So it's a personal type thing, you know, where it's not just I'm putting on my website, but it's actually where the teacher and the students can work interchangeably. We're also looking at purchasing some software where, you know, one of the big things we know is as I looked at the calendar, looking at our calendar, it will be almost 21 weeks since students have been in school. Never in the history of public education have we ever had anything like this has occurred. So this program will give us a baseline immediately where their students are, so that we can work to remediate them at the same time providing them with new instruction. So we're building in those kind of things. There are some, you know, we'll know more now. We're working on guidelines in terms of what does that look like when we open back up, because we do know, I think when we left off, we were having some major challenges with our young kids as far as behavior is concerned. And we do know that this layoff is going to create some kind of anxiety amongst our students and things of that nature. So there's some things that we're working on there. You know, I think we, and I'll tip my hat to instruction and a lot of other, Mr. Lee and a lot of Dr. Anthony, we have really worked at building a plan for when we open back up. You know, we were hoping it would have been this year, however, we know that's over with. So our plan now is we're closing out a school year while we're also building for the next school year. And like you said, there's a lot of variables that can take place. I have meetings online Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with the State Board of Ed, along with other directors of schools. We're being informed of very fluidly what's taking place, what we can expect, and things of that nature.
Are they giving us any numbers where we got to be at before we can return back to school?
It's in phases, but right now they feel the projection is, as they look at the data, that we would be able to return back, you know, in August. Now, what we'll be bringing forth to you on Thursday, along with the graduation options, will be amendments to our schedule. What we want to do is, you know, we're set with a 180-day instructional day and a 200-day contract for teachers. But what we want to do is try to front load some of the stuff that we're doing early on in our calendar, so that we do have a lot more instructional time by the time that we get toward the end of the year. So kind of make-up time. That instructional time can give us some more opportunity to remediate and things of that nature.
Mr. Spurlock, if I may, how are we going to address those students that don't have iPads or laptops? Because I know that You know, there's,
Yeah, kind of like what we did this summer, check them out to them. We're purchasing other software through the CARES Act also, but we checked out, I don't know how many, do you know the number? It was quite a few.
I know as of the first 4 days, we checked out over 3,000.
so we buy them or lease them and then just give them to the children?
No, we check them out to them. Yeah,
They're purchased by us.
That was free, you know, we didn't.
Okay, so we already have them. One of the things that I found when we went to DC is Montgomery County strategically paces their buses throughout the county and they're Wi-Fi enabled so they can do hotspots off of that. I know it might be different for us because our bus situation might be different, but that might be a consideration I'd like to think of.
Anyone else? Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 6.
Our number 6 is a GPS fund budget amendment for medical and life insurance cleanup. You know, throughout the year, we have, you know, especially during this time, we have spouses that will come and onto the employees' insurance and sign up for life insurance. This is pretty commonplace. I would say, though, it's probably getting more prevalent right now and when we are. But we've got $394,010 on already budgeted medical and life insurance. This reallocates $394,010 in already budgeted medical and life insurance dollars to major functions where it is now needed after open enrollment and new employees are in place. This is a routine amendment every year. Motion to amend a total of $394,010 in already budgeted medical and life insurance dollars to the major functions where these funds are needed as presented.
Have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Second? Thank you. Questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 7.
All right, this is a general purpose school fund budget amendment, certified staff line item cleanup for our PRN nurses, payroll overage and cleanup. This amendment adjusts already budgeted teacher and nurse pay by moving a total of $1,108,570, with $947,020 being pay and the additional $161,550 for the related benefits to the lines in budget where it will be needed this year. The largest part of this amendment reflects the decision to move our career and technical economic classes to be in general education classes this year. Now, I'll explain that real quickly on that. What we have in career and technical education, what we've been using is called personal finance. In career and technical education, a pupil-teacher ratio is 1 to 25, with an average cannot be 1 to 25, with that average can't be over 25. So it's 1 to 20, with the average can't be over 25. So we moved those to a gen ed class where you can go up to 1 to 35. So even though this is an increase here in benefits, we also know that we're saving money in the long run because we would have added more career and technical education teachers. All right, the next one is staff changes for PRN nurse usage and vacation payouts for retired employee are covered. This amendment is less than 0.5% of the budget for these employees. Motion to amend a total of $1,108,570 in already budgeted salaries and benefits for teachers and nurses to the line items where these funds are needed as presented.
Have a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Second? Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, number 8.
All right, number 8 is general purpose fund budget amendment, hybrid retirement reclassifications. Like Mr. Beaudry said, this breaks out the legacy from the hybrid plan so that for, I guess, accounting purposes, the state is asked to use that we use the object code 217 to record our employee contribution to the hybrid retirement plan for teachers and other salaried staff in the TCRS hybrid plan. This amendment moves $1,062,500 from object code 204 for the traditional retirement plan to the new object code of 217 for the hybrid retirement plan across several functions as presented. Motion to approve or motion to amend a total of $1,062,500 from object code 204 traditional retirement to spread over several functions to the new Object Code 217 for the hybrid retirement plan as presented.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Second? Thank you, ma'am. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, number 9.
This is cleanup amendments for building program fund budget. This proposed budget amendment for the building program fund moves budgeted funds within Rockville High and Rocky Fork Elementary projects to allocate adequate funding for whiteboards and student furniture for school libraries. These amendments will provide funding like what was provided for other new libraries such as Stewart's Creek High and Brown Chapel Elementary libraries received several years ago. The rest of the budget amendment is small cleanup amendments to close out finished projects such as Oakland Middle Annex construction and screw up the other objects. Approximately how much money Oakland Middle School?
43 whopping dollars in Oakland Middle to close it out.
Okay. Motion to approve the proposed amendment for the building program fund.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Looks like that's it. All right, we're adjourned.